I didn't recognize my father when he walked through my apartment door that Saturday in March 2021. Not because he looked that different, but because his arm was linked through hers, Rebecca's, like they were teenagers at a mall, and he had that expression I hadn't seen since my mother died. That look that says, "I forgot what it felt like to be happy." He was 68 years old. She was 41. They met at a yoga studio in Biltmore Village. That detail matters because I spent years trying to understand how a man who'd spent 43 years with one woman, my mother, could fall so completely for someone he'd known for 4 months. But yoga studios are designed to break down walls, aren't they? They're designed to make you vulnerable. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a structural engineer. I notice when things don't sit right. For the first 6 months after my father introduced Rebecca into our lives, I kept quiet because I'm the observant type, not the accusatory type. I watch. I take notes. I wait. My father, David Mitchell, had spent 38 years as the operations director for a regional logistics company based in Charlotte. When he retired in 2019, his severance package was $340,000, plus his pension of $4,200 per month. He owned our family home in Asheville outright, purchased in 1998 for $380,000, now valued at just over $2.1 million. He had $847,000 in investment accounts, and he'd always told me those accounts would be split equally between me and my brother, Michael. Michael lives in Denver. He's an anesthesiologist. He has money. That's important context. The first odd thing happened in July 2021. My father called me at my office on Merriman Avenue. I was working on the Asheville Renaissance Hotel renovation project, and he asked if I could recommend a family law attorney. "A family law attorney?" I asked. "Dad, are you?" "Rebecca and I want to make sure our paperwork is all in order," he said. His voice had that careful tone, the one people use when they're apologizing in advance. I recommended Robert Chen from Chen and Associates. Good man. Thorough. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out for another 18 months, was that Robert Chen never actually met with my father. Rebecca had called his office directly, using my father's phone, and scheduled the appointment under a different name. By September 2021, my father's will had changed. The documents were filed through a different attorney's office on South Elm Street, someone named Patricia Valdez, who my father claimed he'd met at a UNC Charlotte business seminar. He hadn't. Rebecca met her at a networking event through a mutual connection at an insurance brokerage where Rebecca had worked for 3 years. The new will split his estate differently. Still equal between me and Michael, but with a crucial addition. Rebecca was granted power of attorney and named executor. More importantly, $250,000 of liquid assets were designated to Rebecca directly for her role as caregiver and companion during my retirement years. I found out about this change the way you find out about earthquakes, suddenly, and because the ground beneath you shifted without warning. It was November 2021. I was at my parents' house in Asheville for Thanksgiving. My mother had died in 2014, and Thanksgiving had become this annual obligation that felt heavy and necessary. I was sitting in the kitchen, the same kitchen where my mother taught me to make her pecan pie, and my father was upstairs with Rebecca. They were arguing, or not quite arguing. The conversation had that sharp-edged quality. "You said you'd ask her," Rebecca was saying. "You promised you ask her before making decisions about the house." I wasn't trying to listen. I was genuinely trying to focus on peeling potatoes, but their voices carried down through the heating vents. "Rebecca, I haven't decided anything about the house," my father said. "Yet, you haven't decided yet, but you're thinking about it and you won't include me." I went downstairs and found them in the living room. My father looked exhausted. Rebecca had that expression, the one I started calling her empathy face, where her eyebrows come together and she looks genuinely concerned about you, even though the concern is just performance. "Sarah," she said, turning to me with that face. "You're here, good, maybe you can help us think through something." I didn't say anything. I've learned that silence is often more powerful than words. "Your father has been thinking about adding an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, to the back of the property. It would give us more space, and it would be an excellent investment. The property could be worth an additional $300,000 to $400,000 with the right addition. An ADU, a separate unit on the property where she and my father could have their own space. Or, more likely, where she could monitor my father more carefully. I think, I said, very carefully, that my father should consult with a real estate attorney before making any major property decisions. Rebecca smiled. It was the kind of smile that has teeth in it. Of course, that's sensible. That night, I called Michael in Denver. It was 10 p.m. Mountain Time, and he answered immediately. "Have you talked to Dad about his will?" I asked. There was silence. Then, "How did you know?" So Michael knew. He'd known since August and hadn't told me. "He called me," Michael said. "Said he wanted to make sure Rebecca was protected. I told him to talk to an attorney. I didn't know he already had." "He didn't," I said. "Rebecca did." Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Sarah, Dad's happy for the first time since Mom died. Maybe we should just let him be happy." That's when I realized I was alone in this, not in the physical sense, but in the sense that matters. Michael had decided happiness was worth more than clarity. I hadn't. Over the next 8 months, things accelerated. Rebecca became more present in my father's life. She was there every morning when he woke up. She prepared his meals. She managed his medications, a blood pressure medication and a low-dose aspirin for his heart. She scheduled his doctor's appointments and was present at every single one. And then, in July 2022, my father got sick. He called me on a Tuesday. "Sarah, I'm not feeling well. I think Rebecca's worried about me." "What's wrong?" I asked. "I don't know, nausea, some dizziness, fatigue." He went to his doctor, his regular doctor at Carolina Health Asheville on Hendersonville Road, and they ran a full panel. Everything came back normal, but he continued feeling worse. By August, he'd lost 12 pounds. His hands had a tremor. He was forgetting small things, appointments, conversations from the day before. I drove to Asheville on a Friday and found my father in bed at 2 p.m. Rebecca was downstairs, on her laptop, working on something. My father looked at me, and I felt something ancient and protective wake up inside me. "I'm losing my mind," he said. "You're not," I said, but I didn't actually know that. I asked Rebecca to step outside. We stood in the driveway of the house where I'd grown up, and I said, "When did this start?" "About 6 weeks ago," she said. "I've been wanting to get him to go back to the doctor, but he keeps saying it's stress." The thing about Rebecca is that she sounded genuine. She sounded like a woman who cared. And maybe she did care. Maybe concern and poisoning aren't mutually exclusive. My father went back to his doctor. This time they tested for heavy metals. The results came back positive for thallium. Thallium is a heavy metal used in electronic devices and optical equipment. It's also a poison. The acute symptoms are nausea, tremors, hair loss, and peripheral neuropathy. The chronic exposure symptoms look a lot like early-stage Alzheimer. He was being poisoned. The police became involved. The North Carolina Division of Health and Human Services launched an investigation. An environmental